Well, welcome back to the channel. Once again, I'm your host, Prickly Hedgehog. And again, we're talking about Pimax. And once again, they've sent me out their latest optical engine, which is the ultra-wide optical engine and still features the same 50 ppd QLED panels. But what they've done is they have manipulated the way in which the lenses fit in position within the headset. So they've effectively lowered the stereo overlap by 15 degrees, from 105 degrees to 90 degrees in order to achieve a larger horizontal field of view. So we've gone from 127 to 140. Now, despite this, the clarity hasn't changed. It's still 50 ppd. We still have the same edge-to-edge clarity, they say. That's unchanged. And it's a good option for those of you who want to prioritize peripheral vision over more of the focused experience that we get with the 127 or less versions of their optical engines. Of course, there's a tremendous amount of variation right now within these units that they have for the Crystal Super. So it's getting a little bit confusing too, I think, depending on what you're looking for. For me personally, I think this was a very interesting experience. I actually enjoyed the feeling of having a slightly wider field of view. Now, whether this is just a personal preference or whether it's something that fits more ideally with DCS World is hard to know. I could see it being useful, say, for example, for those of you who really enjoy dogfighting, or perhaps even things like close formation aerobatic type activities within a flight simulation experience where you have the benefit with the auto IPD and the eye tracking, just a better field of view so that you're not having to turn your head quite as much, giving you a little bit more control in that kind of regime. But of course, this is subjective to a certain extent. I actually quite liked it for DCS World. It definitely feels that you have a slightly lower vertical view, but of course you get that wider view. And it doesn't become a letterbox type experience or mailbox slot experience because of the nature of VR anyway. You're still feeling as though you're immersed in it. Compared to, say, I think one of the experiences I had with the widescreen 2D monitors that came out several years ago, one of which I've had for quite a few years, sometimes it tends to distort the image a little bit, and that can make it tricky. One of the things I found very tricky early on getting into Virtual Squadron was managing that wide field of view and getting into position. Always something I struggled with and took me a long time to get better at that, managing my visual points, my cue points, if you like, in terms of matching up where I should be in formation. A little bit easier in VR, although again, you have to readjust your cues. The brain has to adjust to these things. So kind of an interesting experience and one that I've generally enjoyed. Now, I mentioned before, there's quite a few engines within the Crystal range right now. We just talked about the ultra wide, again, 140 degrees. With the 50 ppd lenses, we have the standard, which is again 127 degrees with the QLED lenses, and then Pimax also has the 57 ppd QLEDs. This provides the highest clarity, but a slightly smaller field of view at 120 degrees. And lastly, something really interesting that popped up in one of their videos recently in benchmarking processes and experiences that they were working out with DCS World, and that's the micro OLED lenses, which provide 105 degree field of views, but the visuals seem to be a lot better in terms of latency, and also the weight has been reduced by around 700 grams. So this is some very interesting technology, and I suspect that is going to be a huge benefit to Pimax, and also perhaps a little bit of a fly in the ointment because they continue to push the boundaries of what's capable in VR for non-commercial consumer products and flooding the marketplace with all of these choices. So don't get me wrong, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but as I said, variety is the spice of life. But where am I going to put my money in? I think it's important to remember for those of you on budgets who don't want to splash out on well over $1,000 for some of these headsets. Obviously, you can buy, as I said, or at least alluded to, the modular optical engines themselves. They simply can be unplugged and slotted back into the unit, which is kind of cool. But it also means you have all of these choices and you have to figure out what ones are best for you. I suspect that for those of you who have the money and are keeping an eye on things like this micro OLED technology, this is going to be very interesting as a performance enhancer just because of the nature of that technology. And it got pretty interesting as a discussion point in that video from Pimax, which I will put a link to in the description below so you can check it out for yourselves. So how does it stack up then? What are we talking about with regards to the super micro LED lenses versus the Dream Air product? And I think there's a danger here sometimes in thinking that the newest product may be the best product or the flagship product because it is the newest, etc., etc. So they are very, very similar. And Pimax sort of indicated, here's what you're getting when you're comparing the Dream Air versus the Crystal Super Micro, which for me, I think is going to be something very, very useful for DCS world. Again, we're talking micro OLED lenses and concave view optics, but the purpose here is a little bit different. They've got different users in mind, they say here. They recommend that the Crystal Super Micro LEDs are better for those interested in flight simulation or racing, cockpit VR type stuff. You get your people that are interested in space flight, that kind of thing. So it's going to have a wider horizontal view, 116 degrees. Diagonally, we're talking about 128 degrees. And then we have, again, that modular optical engine for flexibility. So if you wanted to bounce between different engines, the standard over the wide, the micro OLEDs over something else, you could, in theory, do that. And it is a more robust design with powerful speakers and expandability. Now, I should say I haven't checked out the speakers on this unit that was provided to me. Not really interested in headphones that are off the air. And this is our little friend Pippin here, who's new cat that we're slowly introducing. He wants to say hi. And thank you very much for being part of the video today. Now, the Dream Air, a little bit different. More for portable, it's lightweight. We have a slightly smaller horizontal field of view, 110 degrees, with excellent stereo overlap. It is ultra lightweight design and better for social and room scale play. And it's focused on portability, again, without sacrificing the clarity. So you really got your hardcore in the Crystal version versus something a little bit more flexible, something that we see with some of the other brands out there. Now, getting back to the wide field of view, and I really do enjoy it. I think I prefer it over the standard version of the Crystal engines, if you like, the super engines. Just because, like I said, that extra field of view does feel a little bit handier. The performance was about the same or better, again, depending on the setup. And that is something I'm going to have to spend more time tweaking. Still not completely satisfied with the performance of the unit right now compared to the standard version that I've had. Certainly over some of the other variants that I've had as well, such as the Crystal Light, for example. And we're starting to get into some really interesting territory too, with the way we have very high levels of detail in this overlap territory. And that came up as a discussion again in this other video that I mentioned before from Pimax. Again, I'll post a link in that so you can check that out for yourself. So early impressions, very, very favorable. I enjoy the unit. As I said, the performance is not bad. I have had an issue with and this came after a Windows update. I'm not sure exactly why, but it's not something that is being read when the computer gets turned on. I have to unplug it and plug back in the USB for some reason. It could be a unit issue. Somehow it happened after an update, so I'm not sure exactly what happened there. I know other users have complained about this in the past. Mover talked about this with one of the older units that he had, and then it hasn't happened with a later unit that he was sent out. So again, not exactly sure what's going on there. USB stuff is a pain in the butt sometimes to deal with across the range of different technologies, let's be real. Now and again, you just have one of these issues, and yeah, I haven't found a troubleshoot for that. And I have another unit that I can use if this one's going to be a pain. Hopefully that's not the case. So very raw impressions, like I said. Performance, good, if not better than the standard versions of the lenses that I have. The 127 field of view, in other words. In other words, the lenses are a little bit closer together. Some minor troubleshooting things, still some tweaking to do. And that is very common, unfortunately, in VR. Not always something that some people want to do. We're not at the stage yet, I don't think, where we're purely plug and play with regards to this technology, but we're getting very, very close to it. And I should say that the software that Pimax puts out, the Pimax Play software, has improved dramatically over the last 12 months or so since I've been involved with Pimax. The driver series that they continue to update, the software generally, I think, is getting better, getting a little bit more user-friendly, getting easier to tweak. And of course, there are good people out there like Tallymouse, for example, who are producing settings that you can use or modify to suit your own ends. I still think right now this is a pretty high-end gaming rig that's going to be needed. I don't know how this would operate with something less than what I have, which is a 4090. I'm running a reasonably high-end system is probably going to need to run it. I'm not sure how this would fly with something less than a 4090 that I'm running right now. I'm seriously kicking around a 5090 if the budget will stretch this year. I'm not quite sure. The prices have gone down and then they've gone up again a little bit, again, depending on where you're looking. So there's still some variation in the price point of those. It's a lot of investment, unfortunately, in this kind of technology. And again, I think that's going to be off-putting for some people, not everyone's cup of tea. But once you get it up and running, once you've found your settings, it's very hard to go back to a 2D environment. And DCS is just not the same once you've gone into the 3D environment. So, thank you. All right. So there it is. That's my initial impression. I'll be bringing you some more experiences with this headset in the future, including things like the settings that I'm using to get the best out of it. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time, and a little word on how you can get your hands on a Pimax Crystal in the end of the video here. If you're looking to join thousands of others who are enjoying the PC VR journey in flight simulation or racing simulation, then look no further than the Pimax Crystal Lite, which is their entry-level VR headset with some of the best visuals in the business. Right now, the Pimax team is offering a limited time offer trade-in deal on your current headset so that you too can enjoy the clarity of glass-aspheric lenses providing ultra-sharp 2880 by 2880 resolution per eye. Not only that, but the team advised me recently that they have now expanded the trade-in option for the Crystal Super. This is the flagship headset supporting retina levels of clarity, and by taking advantage of this limited option trade-in deal, you'll get the Pimax DMAS headphones valued at $99 and prescription lenses powered by Hans VR up to $159.90. Now, the DMAS gift will officially end on September 14. However, all users who join the event during the campaign are guaranteed to get it. Don't forget to include Prickly Hedgehog 72 when submitting the upgrade form. This ensures you'll receive an extra gift. Now, with this trade-in deal and limited free shipping to the US, EU, UK, Australia, and Canada, it's never been easier to dive into the amazing experience that VR delivers thanks to Pimax. Check out the link in the description below for more information so that you can start your own immersive experience in VR with Pimax.